Level 1, the prophet. You are 32 years old. You live in Gath-Hepher, a small village carved into the hillside of Zebulun, north of Nazareth, close enough to see the smoke of neighboring towns on a clear morning. The word of the Lord has come to you before. You know what it feels like. That sudden interior pressure, a voice that is not a voice, a knowing that bypasses the ears and lands somewhere deeper. You have spoken his words over Israel before, and the king himself has listened. Jeroboam II expanded Israel's borders because of a prophecy that came through you. You have seen God prove faithful. You believe in him. You just don't believe he knows what he's asking this time. Level 2, the command. You are 32 years old. It comes in the night, not fire, not wind, not the theatrical entrance you've grown used to expecting, just the word, clean and absolute, arise. Go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their evil has come up before me. Nineveh. You let the name settle like a stone dropping into still water. You know what Nineveh is. Every Israelite child knows. It is the heart of Assyria, the empire that breaks nations. Its soldiers impale prisoners on wooden stakes and line the roads with them. They skin captives alive. They pile heads into pyramids outside conquered cities. Nineveh is not just an enemy. It is the machinery of terror, the place where your people's worst nightmares are given stone walls and a population of 600,000 souls. God wants you to walk into the center of it and tell them they are wrong. You don't answer. You get up. You pack your bag. And you walk in the opposite direction. Level 3, Joppa. You are 32 years old. The port city smells like salt and fish oil and wet rope. You find a ship almost immediately, as if everything is cooperating with your plan. The fare to Tarshish costs you almost everything you have. Tarshish, which sits at the far western edge of the known world, the absolute opposite direction from Nineveh, you pay it without flinching. The sailors are Phoenician. They worship other gods. They don't know your name or your calling. They only know that a man has paid for passage and wants to go west. You find a spot in the lower hold, curl against a bundle of cargo, and within minutes you are asleep. You sleep so deeply it frightens you later when you think about it. The sleep of a man who has made a decision and refuses to second-guess it. The sleep of someone pretending with great conviction that God cannot find them on a boat. Level 4, the storm. You are 32 years old. You don't feel the first waves. You don't feel the second. By the time the third set hits, the sailors above you are screaming. You wake to the sound of wood groaning under pressure that wood should not survive. The cargo around you shifts. Water runs along the floor of the hold. Above deck, you can hear men praying, not to one god, but to many, each sailor calling out in a different language to a different heaven, bargaining for their lives. Crates are being thrown overboard. The ship is lightening itself to survive. And you are still asleep. The captain finds you. He grabs you by the shoulder and shakes until your eyes open. His face is wet with spray and terror. "How can you sleep?" he shouts. "Get up. Call on your God. Maybe your God will notice us and we won't die." You go up on deck and you see what you've done. Level 5, the lot. You are 32 years old. The sailors decide to cast lots to find whose fault this is. They've exhausted theology. Now they want answers. The lot falls on you. They circle you. The questions come fast. Who are you? Where do you come from? What do you do? What people are you from? You hear yourself speak the words that have defined your entire life, the words you have never been ashamed of until this exact moment. I am a Hebrew. I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. A long silence. The sea is not calm. The waves are not waiting for your confession to finish, but something in the air shifts. Every man on deck understands the same thing at the same time. The God who made this sea is angry, and the man who offended him is standing in front of them. What should we do to you, they ask, to make the sea calm down for us? You know the answer. You've known it since you came up from the hold. Pick me up, you say, and throw me into the sea. Then it will calm down. I know it is my fault this storm came on you. Level 6, overboard. You are 32 years old. The sailors don't throw you immediately. They try to row to shore first. These men who owe you nothing, who don't worship your God, who could solve their problem right now, they row until their arms fail. The sea gets worse. Finally, they cry out to your God, and please, Lord, don't let us perish because of this man's life, and they pick you up. The last thing you see before you go over the railing is the sky. It is the color of bruises and salt. The clouds are low and churning, and then you are in the water. The cold hits you like a wall. The waves close over your head immediately. You go down faster than you expect. The ship disappears above you, shrinking into grey. Your lungs start their protest. The pressure in your ears builds. The light fades from green to dark blue to something darker than blue, and the sea goes calm. You know it because you can feel it, even as you sink, the cessation of turbulence, the water settling around your falling body. Your prayer worked, and you are still going down. Level 7, the fish. You are 32 years old. You don't see it coming. Something closes around you, not jaws exactly, not the grinding mechanical bite you expect from a large predator. Something vast and warm simply receives you, and you are inside. Dark beyond any dark you have experienced. No light, no up or down, the smell of brine and digestion, warmth pressing in from every side. You are not dead. You reach out and your hands touch something that is neither water nor air, but living tissue, the walls of an interior that pulses faintly, rhythmically around you. 3 days, 3 nights. Time moves strangely when there is nothing to mark it by. You cannot see the sun rise or set. You cannot feel morning. You have only the pulse of the creature around you and the sound of your own breathing and the terrifying quietness of a God who is waiting. You begin to pray. Level 8, the prayer. You are 32 years old. You pray the way drowning men pray, which is to say without editing, without theology, without the careful phrasing of a professional prophet. You pray the way the Psalms sound when you actually need them. I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. You remember the temple, you remember what it felt like to be in God's presence without running. You remember that you had something once, access, intimacy, the privilege of being heard, and you threw it into the sea. What I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. It is not an eloquent prayer, but it is the first honest thing you have said in days. Level 9, dry land. You are 32 years old. The fish vomits you onto dry land. There is no dignified way to describe this. One moment you are in darkness, the next, with a violence that turns your whole body inside out, you are on a beach, wet and shaking, the sun absolutely blinding, the ground the most solid thing you have ever felt beneath your hands and knees. You stay there for a long time, just breathing. The word of the Lord comes to you a second time, the same command, same city, same instruction, word for word, exactly as before. This time you get up and go. Level 10, Nineveh. You are 32 years old, 3 days to walk across the city. That is how large Nineveh is. You enter from the eastern gate and begin preaching before you have time to construct arguments against it. The words come out of you, stripped of sophistication. 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown.
8 words. You say them 10 times. You say them 100 times. You say them to merchants and soldiers and children and priests and women drawing water from wells. You say them until your voice is raw. And something you did not expect, it's something you were quietly and shamefully hoping would not happen, begins to happen. They believe you. Level 11, repentance. You are 32 years old.
The news travels faster than you walk. By the time it reaches the palace, the king of the greatest empire in the world has already heard about the Hebrew prophet in the eastern quarter. The king rises from his throne. He takes off his royal robe. He covers himself in sackcloth and sits down in ashes. And then he issues a decree. Every person, every animal, no food, no water, everyone in sackcloth, everyone crying out to God, everyone turning from violence and from wickedness. Who knows, God may turn and relent. 600,000 people fasting and weeping and turning. God sees it and God relents. You knew he would. That is exactly why you ran. Level 12, the plant. You are 32 years old. You are furious. You sit on a hill east of the city, and you argue with God out loud without apology. This is why I fled to Tarshish in the first place. I knew you were gracious. I knew you were compassionate. I knew you would forgive them. And I did not want you to, because they are Assyria, because they will use this mercy and then in 20 years or 50 march into your country and tear it apart, because grace given to your enemies feels like violence done to your people, because you are a prophet and you understand consequences and you cannot make yourself feel good about this outcome. God lets you finish. Then he asks one question. Is it right for you to be angry? You don't answer. You build a shelter and sit in your anger and watch to see what will happen to the city. A plant grows up over you overnight, broad-leafed, shade-giving, a mercy you did not ask for. You are genuinely glad for it, happier about a plant than you have been about anything in weeks. The next morning, a worm cuts the plant at the root. It withers before the sun is halfway up the sky. A scorching east wind arrives. The sun beats on your head. You feel faint. You feel like you are dying. It is right for me to be angry, you say. Angry enough to die. God is quiet for a moment. Then, you care about a plant you did not plant that came up in a night and died in a night. Should I not care about Nineveh? 120,000 people who do not know their right hand from their left. The book ends there. No answer recorded, no resolution, no argument refuted, no conversion described, no inner peace returned. Just the question hanging in the scorching air above a hill east of a city that is still standing because of a mercy you delivered against your will. You are sitting in the silence of a God who refuses to hate what you hate, who refuses to love only who you love, who can use a reluctant, angry, sunburned prophet and still accomplish exactly what he intended from the beginning. And now you are history.